Hey guys, welcome back to Julius Caesar, Act 3, Scene 1, where we continue from the previous section wherein we discussed about the assassination of Julius Caesar. So the aftermath of the assassination of Julius Caesar begins a lot of new things in Rome. The conspirators killed Julius Caesar for the sole purpose of protecting the republicanism in Rome, to maintain that Roman Republic has its rights and its distribution of power among the patricians and the plebeians alike. However, this does not become true because someone else is all set to take over the power and occupy the vacuum created by the death of Julius Caesar, and that is none other than Mark Antony. Now, when we think of Mark Antony, we always imagine him to be a kind and loving and loyal friend of Julius Caesar who is all set to avenge the death of the great leader of Rome. However, this is not always the case, given the fact that Mark Antony is all set to become the next part of the triumvirate of Rome. And he comes up with a new conspiracy along with Julius Caesar's nephew Octavius and a soldier named Lepidus to become the new rulers of Rome. Let's see what takes place. So immediately after Julius Caesar's assassination, the conspirators declared that Rome's liberty has been protected, in which Cinna says, "Liberty, freedom, tyranny is dead. Run hence, proclaim, cry it about the streets," which means there's liberty, there's freedom, and tyranny is dead. The tyrant Julius Caesar, the authoritarian dictator of Rome, is dead. Go about to the streets and proclaim, tell the news to all the people that the republic is safe, the democracy is safe. And Cassius says, "Some to the common pulpits cry out, liberty, freedom, enfranchisement." Go to the public places, the pulpits. So the pulpits were basically platforms all over public places in Rome wherein orators or patricians could go about and narrate whatever they wished to the ordinary masses. And Cassius tells the other conspirators, go about to the public places, stand up on the pulpits and announce that Julius Caesar is dead and Rome's freedom is safe. And Brutus tells to the other members of the Senate House, the ones who were frightened after witnessing this horrific sight, as they say, "People and senators, be not affrighted, fly not, stand stiff, ambition's debt is paid." And he tells the senators, all the other people who were present in the Senate House when this horrific sight took place, he says, "Do not be afraid, we are not going to kill you. There's no need for you to run away. Be in one place because ambition's debt is paid." And this statement means Julius Caesar was too ambitious. He wanted to become the king of Rome and he paid the price. He paid the price for his ambition with his own blood, which meant the conspirators were not keen or intent on killing anyone else other than Julius Caesar. And Casca tells to Brutus, "Go to the pulpit, Brutus." So Casca tells Brutus to take the pulpit and announce to the people that there was nothing to be afraid of, that the conspirators had killed Julius Caesar for the sake of the Roman citizens. And Decius Brutus adds, and Cassius too. So Decius Brutus adds that Cassius too should join Brutus and convince the people of Rome that there was nothing wrong about the murder of Julius Caesar. And Brutus says, "Where's Publius?" So they ask, where is Publius, who was an old senator. So they are worried that Publius, as an old senator, may be frightened, and if he says something to the people are going to believe him. Given the fact in the historical backdrop of Rome, age, especially old people, were given much importance in contrast to the younger people. And since Publius, being an old senator, would have people listening to him rather than Brutus or Cassius, who were comparatively younger than Publius. And Metellus, Cimber, and Cinna say, here quite confounded with this mutiny. And Publius was standing in one corner of the Senate House, frightened, stunned by what he saw. So obviously the sight of Julius Caesar being stabbed over and over again by the conspirators was too horrific, was too frightening for him to see. So he stood in one corner, too afraid to move or say anything. And Metellus Cimber calls them and say, "Stand fast together, lest some friend of Caesar's should chance." So he says, let us be united before a friend of Caesar, comes back to retaliate. So they are worried because Julius Caesar had a lot of friends, he had a lot of supporters, and the last thing they wanted at this moment was the supporters instigating the people of Rome to turn against the conspirators. And hence, Metellus Cimber says that we need to present a united front to the people of Rome and tell them the truth about this assassination. And Brutus says, talk not of standing, Publius, good cheer. There is no harm intended to your person, nor to no Roman else. So tell them, Publius. So Brutus, Marcus Brutus, the chief conspirator, he tells this old senator Publius, he says, tell the Romans that there's no harm going to befall on any of the Romans, that no harm is going to befall on a senator. Other than Julius Caesar, the conspirators posed no threat to anyone else. And Brutus tells Publius, convince the people of Rome that nothing bad is going to happen to them. And be cheerful, don't worry, and don't be frightened. And Cassius adds, and leave us, Publius, lest the people rushing on us should do your age some mischief. So this statement means Cassius tells Publius, once you make the statement that no harm is going to befall on any of the Romans, leave the Senate house and go back, because if any of the people angry with the conspirators attack Publius, and since Publius was an old person, he probably would not survive any confrontation with the angry masses. At this juncture, we have Cassius and Brutus saying, do so, let no man abide this deed, but we the doers. And he tells the other senators and other spectators who were a witness to this sight, and he tells them, all of you leave. Those of you who are not a part of the conspiracy need not be held accountable for what we have done. We take full responsibility for our actions, and we do not want anyone else who is not a part of this plan to be blamed for what we have done. At this point, Trebonius comes back. So Trebonius was initially tasked to lead Mark Antony out of the Senate house so that he does not throw a wrench in the works. He does not stop the conspirators from killing Julius Caesar. And Trebonius now, he comes back and he makes a statement. To which Cassius asks, where is Antony? So the sole concern of the conspirators is what happened to Antony, because Antony, like all the conspirators knew except Brutus, that he posed a major threat to the safety of the conspirators, and they ask, where is he? Trebonius says, fled to his house amazed, men, wives and children stare, cry out and run as if it were doomsday. So everyone says, Trebonius gives a reply that everyone is frightened. Men, women and children are frightened. They're terrified. They feel like it's the doomsday, the end of the world. And Mark Antony ran to his house. Mark Antony did not come to fight back with the conspirators. Rather, he ran to his house. And Brutus says, fates, we will know your pleasures. When we shall die, we know 'tis but the time, and drawing days out that men stand upon. He says, fates, now we know what you have decided. So fates is basically a mention of the ancient Greek goddesses, the three goddesses who decided what happened to humankind from the day they were born. So the first goddess was supposed to pull the thread of life wherein a man was born. The second goddess wove the thread into a cloth which represented all of the life's happiness and sorrows. And the third goddess cut off the thread, which meant that the person dies. So Brutus says, this is the point where we come to know what fates have decided for us, whether we are going to live or whether we are going to die. So he says, now is the time we know what fate has decided, whether our lives are going to prolong or whether we are destined to die. And Cassius says, why that cuts off 20 years of life, cuts off so many years of fearing death. And Cassius says, there's nothing to be worried about death. If a person is killed 20 years before his actual death, he is actually relieved of the worry of death. So a person, if he's killed 20 years before he's supposed to die, does not have to spend the next 20 years worrying when he's going to die. So Cassius's logic is such that if you're killed at any moment in your life, then you're basically freed of the fear of death. And so this is what Cassius means. So in other words, he wants to say that they did a favor to Julius Caesar by killing him. Now that Julius Caesar is dead, he does not have to worry when he's going to die. And so this is what he means by this statement. He who is cut off 20 years of life cuts off so many years of fearing death. And Brutus says, grant that, and death is a benefit. So are we Caesar's friends that have abridged his time of fearing death. He says, since we killed Julius Caesar, we did him a favor. We are his friends actually by killing him, because we killed him and now he doesn't have to worry about death. He does not have to fear death. He went out happily. He didn't expect that he would die on the Ides of March, and he died. So we actually did him a favor by killing him. Stoop, Romans, stoop, and let us bathe our hands in Caesar's blood, up to the elbows, and besmear our swords. Then walk we forth even to the marketplace, waving our red weapons o'er our heads. Let us all cry, peace, freedom, and liberty. So Brutus says, bend low, Romans, bend low. He calls upon the conspirators saying, bend and wash your hands in the blood of Julius Caesar. Make sure your hands are smeared with his blood. Make sure your swords are covered with his blood. And then let us march to the marketplaces. Let us march to the streets of Rome, crying freedom, peace, and liberty. And this is the fulfillment of the prediction of Calpurnia's dream. The Calpurnia who is Julius Caesar's wife, had a dream, this exact dream the night before, wherein she saw Romans bathing in the blood of Julius Caesar. And Julius Caesar dismissed this nightmare as a mere figment of Calpurnia's silly imagination. And unfortunately, that was not the case. It was not a silly imagination. It was a foreshadowing of what was going to happen to Julius Caesar on the Ides of March. And Cassius says, stoop then and wash. How many ages hence shall this our lofty scene be acted over in states unborn and accents yet unknown? And he says, let us all bend down and make sure our hands and swords are covered with blood. Who knows how many times this scene is going to be played over and over again in countries that are yet to form and in languages that are yet to be spoken. So this is an interesting point, because it's basically William Shakespeare gives a nod to his own play. So here he wants to make his play seem more valid by saying that his play was actually foreseen, or his play was actually predicted by the conspirators 1,000 years before. So this is an interesting part, because Julius Caesar his death took place in 44 BC, and now about 1,500 years later, William Shakespeare enacted it, and now almost 500 years after that, we are enacting it. So the interesting point is, it's as though our acting of Julius Caesar was predicted by the conspirators all those years ago. Obviously, that was not the case historically, but that is an interesting element which has been added to this play by the writer Shakespeare. And Brutus says, how many times shall Caesar bleed in sport, that now on Pompey's bases lies along, no worthier than dust? And he says, how many times will Caesar's death be reenacted, and he will fall at the foot of Pompey's statue, no more worth than the dust on the floor. And he says that Caesar has lost his value. When he was alive, Julius Caesar was the Lord of Rome, and now he is no more valuable than the dust that covers the base of Pompey's statue. This is interesting figure of speech being used over here, given the fact that Julius Caesar was the one who assassinated Pompey at the beginning of the play, and now he lies dead at the foot of Pompey's statue. It's a kind of feeling that Pompey, even in his death, took revenge on Julius Caesar. And Cassius says, soft as that shall be, so often shall the not of us be called the men that gave their country liberty. And he says, and as often as it happens, all the people around the world will remember us as the men who gave freedom to Rome, as the men who saved Rome from a tyrannical king, a despot who was all set to take away the rights and the freedoms of the Roman citizens. And Decius Brutus says, "What shall be forth?" He asks, "What shall we do now?" And Cassius says, "Aye, every man away. Brutus shall lead and will grace his heels with the most boldest and best hearts of Rome." And Cassius says, "Let us all go, march on the streets with Brutus in front of us, and proclaim to the world what has happened." And at that juncture, a servant enters, and Brutus says, "Soft, who comes here?" And this servant gives the answer, "A friend of Antony's." So at this point, the servant comes inside, and Brutus says, "Who is it?" And the servant gives the reply, "I'm a friend of Antony, Mark Antony." And the servant gives this statement, "Thus Brutus did my master did bid me kneel. Thus did Mark Antony bid me fall down, and being prostrate, thus he bade me say, Brutus is noble, wise, valiant, and honest. Caesar was mighty, bold, royal, and loving. Say, I love Brutus, and I honor him. Say, I feared Caesar, honored him, and loved him." So at this point he says, "My servant, my master, Mark Antony, has sent me to do this to you. He told me to fall down on my knees, to bend down, be prostrate, and say to you that you are noble, wise, and valiant. That Brutus is a wise man, he's a noble man, he's a valiant man, and he's an honest man." Mark Antony told the servant to say, "I loved Caesar, I honored Caesar, I respected Caesar, and I feared Caesar. But right now, my loyalty lies with you, Brutus." So basically, what the servant tells Brutus is that Mark Antony has changed. He has switched over his loyalties from Julius Caesar to Mark Antony. So Mark Antony sends his servant to request Brutus to be lenient to him. So the fact that Mark Antony sends the servant to Brutus makes Brutus feel that Mark Antony is ready to change his loyalties, to switch his loyalties from Julius Caesar to the conspirators. And he says, "If Brutus will vouchsafe that Antony may safely come to him and be resolved, how Caesar hath deserved to lie in death, Mark Antony shall not love Caesar dead so well as Brutus living." So he says, if Brutus guarantees the safety of Mark Antony and convinces him the reason why Julius Caesar was killed, then Mark Antony will be more faithful to Brutus than he was to Julius Caesar. And he also adds, "So well as Brutus living, but will follow the fortunes and affairs of noble Brutus, thorough the hazards of this untrod state with all true faith. So says my master Antony." And he says, if you convince me why you killed Julius Caesar, if Brutus gives me an explanation as to why it was necessary to kill Julius Caesar, then I will be your most faithful follower. I'll be your most faithful supporter and ensure that you have my support all through this journey of a new Rome. And Brutus is slightly happy that Mark Antony did not have to be killed, just as the conspirators had planned earlier, but he had changed his mind and changed sides by himself. And he says, "Thy master is a wise and valiant Roman. I never thought him worse. Tell him so please him come unto this place. He shall be satisfied, and by my honor depart untouched." And he says, "Your master Mark Antony is a wise and a brave Roman. Tell him to come into the capital, and I will give him an answer to his questions. And I assure him that he will leave the capital unharmed." And the servant says, "I'll fetch him presently. I will call him right now." And he leaves. So at this point, Brutus is extremely happy that everything is falling in place, that Mark Antony has changed sides without the conspirators having to threaten him or to kill him. However, Cassius, who was slightly skeptical of Mark Antony from the very beginning, has something different to say. And he says, "I know that we shall have him as well to a friend." So Brutus thinks that Mark Antony is going to be a new friend of the conspirators. However, Cassius says, "I wish we may, but yet I have a mind that fears him much, and my misgiving still falls shrewdly to the purpose." He says, "I wish we could trust Mark Antony. I wish we could consider him as a friend. However, I have certain doubts, I have misgivings that he is going to be a truly a friend of the conspiracy. And Cassius wants Brutus the second time. So it is interesting to see that you can draw a parallel between Julius Caesar ignoring the warnings given to him by the soothsayer, his wife, the priest, and the Artemidorus, and the Brutus ignoring the warnings given by Cassius again and again. So Cassius warns Brutus about Mark Antony thrice, and Brutus refuses to listen to Cassius, which results in his downfall. The same way Julius Caesar refuses to listen to the soothsayer, his wife, the priest, and Artemidorus 4 times, which also results in his death. So it is an interesting parallel which can be drawn in this play. And at this point, Mark Antony appears, and the first statement he says is addressed to Caesar. He says, "O mighty Caesar, dost thou lie so low? O exalted great Caesar, how do you lie on the floor? Are all thy conquests, glories, triumphs, spoils shrunk to this little measure? Has all your victories, has all your glories, has all your power and fame shrunk into this small area? Is it all of your greatness has become as big as your dead body? Fare thee well," he says, "fare thee well," which means good luck to you or goodbye. "I know not, gentlemen, what you intend. Who else must be led to blood? Who else is rank? If I myself, there is no hour fit as Caesar's death hour, nor no instrument of half that worth as those your swords, made rich with the most noble blood of all this world." And he says, "I don't know, gentlemen, what else you have proposed to do. I don't know whether you're going to kill others. I don't know whether I'm going to be one of the person who is going to die today. But if you have decided that I should be killed at this moment, I don't think there is any other time better than this moment, because I am going to die with Julius Caesar. There's no other time better than the time of Julius Caesar's death, and there is no other sword better than your sword, the sword covered with the great Caesar's blood that is going to kill me." So Mark Antony says that he is ready to die at the very moment. Mark Antony says he's ready to die at the very moment as Julius Caesar, and he says he's truly blessed to be killed at the very time as Julius Caesar. And he says, "I do beseech ye, if you bear me hard, now whilst your purpled hands do reek and smoke, fulfill your pleasure." He says, if you truly intend to kill me at this very moment, before the blood on your hands dries up. Kill me before your anger has cooled down. And he says, "Live 1,000 years, I shall not find myself so apt to die. Because at this moment, I'm ready to die. I don't think I'll be ready to die any time, even if I live 1,000 years. Even if I live 1,000 years, I'll never be more ready to die than I am right now. No place will please me so, no mean of death, as here by Caesar, and by you cut off, the choice and master spirits of this age." He says, there is no time better, there is no place better than this moment where Caesar has died, and I can die too. And Brutus convinces Mark Antony, saying that the conspirators were not interested in killing the conspirators were not interested in killing Mark Antony. And they say, "Oh Antony, beg not your death of us." Antony, don't talk about us killing you. We're not interested in killing you. Why would we want to kill you? There is a very good reason why we killed Julius Caesar, and that reason does not apply to you. He says, "Though now we must appear bloody and cruel, as by our hands in this our present act, you see we do, yet you see but our hands, and this is the bleeding business they have done." He says, you judge us based upon our appearances. You judge us by the fact that our hands and our swords are covered with blood. You judge us by the fact that Julius Caesar's body is fallen lifeless on the floor, bleeding, and the blood seeping down into the soil. You judge us because you think we are cruel, hard-hearted butchers standing over the dead body of the person. But he says, our hearts you see not, they are pitiful. However, you don't see our hearts. You don't see our mind. You don't see the pain this moment has caused to us. You don't see what this incident has truly meant to us. He says, As fire drives out fire, so pity, pity. He says, the same way fire puts out fire, the same way pity has put out pity. We feel pity, we don't feel sympathetic to Julius Caesar because we felt sympathetic to the people of Rome. So this is an interesting analogy over here. So basically what Brutus wants to say is, he says, fire puts out fire. So it's a well-known statement that if you burn something in advance, it's not going to burn again. So he says fire puts out fire and pity puts out pity. So what Brutus wants to say over here is, the pity which we felt for the Romans made us pitiless towards Caesar. Or because we were forgiving and loving towards the Romans, we were unforgiving and unloving towards Caesar. So there was a choice. Either we had to support the citizens of Rome and kill Julius Caesar, or we had to support Julius Caesar and allow the Romans to die as slaves. And hence we decided to make the difficult choice and support the Romans. It is not that we were heartless towards Julius Caesar, it is that we took too much of emotional value of the Romans. And then he continues saying, hath done this deed on Caesar. For your part, to you our swords have leaden points, Mark Antony. Our arms in strength of malice, our hearts of brother's temper, do receive you with all kinds of love, good thoughts, and reverence. What Brutus likes to say is, to you, Mark Antony, our swords are made up of lead. So lead was basically a blunt metal during the time when iron was used to make swords. He says, we killed Julius Caesar with iron swords, but to you, it's as blunt as lead. We have no interest in killing you. You are our brother, and we are going to welcome you with open arms. So don't ever think that we are going to kill you. Don't ever feel unsafe when you are with the conspirators. And Cassius says, your voice shall be as strong as any man's in the disposing of new dignities. And Cassius says, you are going to play an important role in the foundation of a new Roman Republic. Your opinions are going to be taken into consideration by the conspirators when we make decisions for the future of our country. And Brutus says, only be patient till we have appeased the multitude besides themselves with fear, and then we will deliver you the cause. Why I that did love Caesar when I struck him have thus proceeded. And he says, the only thing that we need to do right now is be patient and convince the multitude, that is the people of Rome, why we killed Julius Caesar. I have to convince the people of Rome why I killed Julius Caesar despite being a friend of Caesar. And then we can continue to be what we truly want. And Antony says, I doubt not of your wisdom. Let each man render me his bloody hand. First Marcus Brutus will I shake with you. Next Caius Cassius do I take your hand. Now Decius Brutus, yours now, yours Metellus, yours Cinna and my valiant Casca, yours, though last not last in love, yours good Trebonius. Gentlemen all, alas, what shall I say? And he says, I believe you, conspirators, I do not doubt your wisdom. I am fully convinced of what you said. Your explanation is satisfactory, and I am going to shake hands with you to show that I am truly your friend. And Mark Antony offers his hand to each and every one of the conspirators, and he says, let me shake hands and make sure that the blood of Julius Caesar, which was on your hands, is now on my hands. This is a more of a symbolic gesture saying that he is ready to accept the blame of Julius Caesar's death on himself. And he says, my credit now stands on such slippery ground that one of two bad ways you must conceit me, either a coward or a flatterer. And he says, right now you may be thinking that I am either a coward, that is the reason why I am supporting you, or I am a flatterer, that is the reason why I am being nice towards you. And either way, my reputation is at stake, because no matter what I am, a coward or a flatterer, you'll always have a negative opinion of me. So we are going to continue what happens and how Mark Antony instigates the people of Rome without actually making the conspirators suspicious in the next video.